Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Welcome to Funnel Reboot, where we explore how to upgrade our lead generation. If you want to get new episodes as soon as they're out, please hit the subscribe button in your favorite podcast listening app. And I love getting your feedback. I invite you to tweet me at Funnel Reboot. You can comment back to me on Instagram at Funnel Reboot, or you can use the feedback form on Funnel Reboot, or you can leave listener feedback at 613-703-7073. Well, we're going to talk today about scams. We're going to cover exactly how marketing scammers do their craft. We're going to talk about how companies and individuals can fall prey to both people who are knowingly defrauding you, as well as people who are following a system and unknowingly passing on bad marketing practices. Hear what a vendor's responsibilities are in screening buyers, and why ethical marketing vendors qualify their buyers for those who have the highest odds of success. Discover how in this internet age, the moral hazards of getting scammed are actually amplified, how little it costs a vendor to set up a website and actually disconnect themselves if anything goes south. And lastly, we're going to talk about how marketing scammers and gambling institutions are similar. See, the difference is that gambling advertises about how you're going to lose money, but scammers don't quite come clean about it. Let's meet our guest. Well, I'm very excited today to talk to somebody about a topic that kind of gets my blood pressure going. It is scams out there, particularly marketing scams. And to do that, I'm going to bring Micheal. So welcome to the show, Micheal.
Well, thanks so much, Glenn, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So you and I have riffed on this before, and we'll just jump into it with talking about the ways that we get suckered into either buying a marketing service or a certain platform tactic that tends to steer us awry. And I'm interested in knowing, do you think that this is common, or do you think that this is something that most of us will never run into?
I think personally it's fairly common. I think as long as humanity has been around on this planet, there's been people that have been taking advantage of other people. What's I think really interesting, though, that's a little different in today's age is that there's a lot of times where someone could potentially get advantage out of you, but they're not even doing it intentionally. They're just following a system that they learned. So that's one of the things with the modern internet is that there's a lot more different ways that you can be scammed, and it's not always by people who are wittingly scamming you.
Sad to say, yes. And let's maybe bring in the matter of who's doing the work here. So you talk about the internet providing, a platform, and on top of that platform, people make systems or they design a course or something like that. Would it be fair to say, though, Micheal, before the internet, most of us didn't have the option of DIY marketing? If I needed to get placement in a whole bunch of newspapers across the country. Back before the internet, I was actually contacting a media buyer, and that person in an agency, they're a professional and they're doing the insertions. I couldn't even reach the things that I might do right or wrong, compared to nowadays where I can do it myself. Do you think that this is part of what the problem is?
I think it's a bit of that. What it is, the internet, it's incredibly powerful, and it's really taken given a lot of power to just any person, which is an amazing thing, and I would never ever knock that. But what it really has done is it's just really given us more opportunities to make mistakes and to get taken by things. There's more things to look at. The internet used to be the thing that we all thought was going to give us all the knowledge in the world, and it has. But now what we've realized is there's just too much. There's too much to look at. There's too much to know. And it's just saturated with right information, wrong information. So in one hand, yeah, it's given people more power. But on the other hand, there's just more places for the darkness to kind of hide.
Very good point. As you say, there's kind of two pieces of it. There's the practice that might be shady, and then there's maybe the person who is doing it who is actually just trying to get a sale more than they're actually trying to give you some marketing help. You can pick either one of these, but why don't you take us down the road of what you would consider to be that a classic example of how we as people who are trying to sell something can go wrong in one of these ways.
Cool. Well, I think what's really important to start with is to actually define what is exactly a scam, because your definition of what a scam is probably not my definition. And if we go with the classic sense of, is a scam just, stealing someone's money or promising them something, not giving them anything? Like, that's the sort of thing we can all agree on. This is something wrong and this is something bad. Yeah. But if that was the actual definition of a scam, then there would actually be very little scams on the planet, which we kind of know that's not true. We know there's scams all over the place.
Yes.
And what it is that a good scam is something that gets so close to the real thing, but just isn't the thing. And you're talking about, old, traditional media and things like that, where there was only a business to go through. While that might have closed the door for a lot of people to get into marketing, the one advantage it has is that the institution of marketing, the advertising, was a little bit more protected, because the only people in the actual advertising game were people that were legitimate, that had an infrastructure behind them, that had to invest in. But with the internet, because everything is free, I can start a website for free right now. I can get in front of thousands of people for free, and anybody can do it. Anybody can use a really professional looking video on an iPhone. So you have to really, so how do you tell the difference between a legitimate company, a legitimate person, and a scam? That's where the lines are getting really blurring. And for me, to not make it overcomplicated, I think what we can always say is a scam is when the business exchange is not creating value for both people, at least on a consistent basis. So if you buy a widget from somebody, you might pay them $100 for that widget, because that widget's going to give you $110 worth of value. You pay that $100 because you're going to get more value. But what we're starting to see in this courses and gurus, like you might have seen the gurus on your Facebook feed, they target you based on your particular niche. And they saying, here's my system for $300 or for $500 or $2,000. They have a course that will, that if you just follow this course and you work really hard, you'll be able to make lots of money. And the reason why I might define those as a scam is not that they never work for anybody, but overall, the person doing the selling is getting all the benefit, and maybe a couple people might get the actual value from the course, but the vast majority, say 90 to 95% of people who buy these courses are getting no value, because they're either not the right person, don't have the skill sets, or maybe the course just doesn't work for everybody.
And it's funny because in some ways we've got the psychology of guilt working against us. I know that if I signed up for a course and someone's giving me knowledge and I try to do it myself and it bombs, even though the internet allows this wonderful facility for giving reviews, I might just be too guilt-ridden and embarrassed to say, well, I had a failure on that, and I tried, exactly what this person said. So it can't be me. It's, got to be something to do with their course. Or when I reached out to them to actually get real help, I got crickets. So, it's interesting, it's like the psychology back in the days of, circuses and P.T. Barnum. And, once P.T. Barnum had fooled people to come into the tent by paying, and then to leave the tent because they had some sign, like he had a famous sign saying "this way to the egress," which is just another way of saying "this way out." People would walk out, but they wouldn't walk back around and, grumble that they got gypped because they were too embarrassed. The fact that they just didn't read a sign right.
Yeah, and the guilt factor is kind of interesting. And one thing we do have to talk about that's really important when we're talking about scams, one of the things you're going to hear often is personal responsibility. And I'm a big believer in that. I really believe that you can't blame the world for your mistakes. You can't go around blaming everyone else for why things don't work.
True.
And the problem that the internet has created is because a lot of these courses and systems don't cost anything to run. There's not a lot of responsibility on the business owner to make them work, right? Like saying, hey, I've created the course. You got to it's up to you to put the value and put the work in. And I totally understand that. The problem is that's a lot of power and that's a lot of responsibility that you're putting on the customer. And I think that creates a moral hazard. So for instance, if any business owner that's listening to this, if I told you that 95% of the people who bought your course or your marketing system lost money and they didn't get the value out of it that they were hoping for, would you feel good about that? And I think most rational people would go, yeah, I might say, you know what, maybe it's not everybody. Maybe it's the course that isn't doing things. And that's where I think we can start drawing line. Now, everyone might have their own line. Maybe 70-30 is your line. Maybe 90-10 is your line. Like someone told me the other day that where I was going through real estate numbers. Do you know how many real estate agents sign up to become a real estate agent versus how many of them actually sell a house?
No.
It's a very small amount. And you might say it's a scam, but on the other hand, you go, there's actually a process of weeding out the people who aren't even made to cut it, who aren't cut out for it, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing is most real estate agents are often, they're often doing it on their own. Like they're actually their own business owner. Whereas, joining a marketing system where they call you your own business owner, that person who signed you up is making money off of you. Whereas real estate, usually you made your own decision to become. Nobody's really profiting off of introducing you into the real estate world, right? And
yes,
yeah. So that's kind of the lines you have to deal with scams. Is that it's a really gray area, and you have to be careful that you don't end up just blaming everyone else for you not doing well in a course.
Yeah. And I think on the real estate example is a good one. In that case, like you say, the professional accreditation body is there to help not only the people who make it in, but it is weeding those who shouldn't be there. Sad to say, there really isn't a equivalent in the world of marketing. Someone will use numbers that they've run from past campaigns, for example, as social proof of why you should listen to them and adopt their ideas. But there really isn't a professional body that, looks after these, digital product sellers.
The other problem with marketing that you've just also identified is that marketing, I think, Glenn, you could take the exact same marketing campaign, everything down to how it's run, who ran it, and give it to a different company. And it just won't work because it's a slightly different audience. It's a slightly different brand. Marketing is never a guaranteed thing. It's everything is individual and unique. So if your claims are, this is a marketing system that anybody can use,
yes,
or anybody can do it if they just work hard, you already know you're in dangerous scam kind of waters.
You're completely right. And actually, this is the best segue to kind of talking on the other side of the fence, which is the marketing services area. A miss is as good as a mile. And that provides in the do-it-yourself world, that provides the person who sells that knowledge an out, because they'll say, well, your circumstances are different. Your mileage has varied. In the case of the Done For You service, and you and I are both respectively owners of marketing agencies who do this. That problem manifests in a different way, I think. It manifests in a way that I have to qualify a buyer, and I have to understand, if I'm going to do it for them, whether I have the right practices for them. And I like to think of, marketing plans as snowflakes. Every one of them is different. But the other thing is I as well have a responsibility to structure a mechanism for payment, the way that performance is being reported. That to me, I take the responsibility to match that to the value that someone is going to derive from it. And there's a host of risks that you and I as sellers take on when we do that. What if they sell something that has a 6-month sales cycle? So I do have to say to them, you know what, you've got to sign on with us for minimum 2 quarters, and you will have to pay us some amount, but I have to, set it up in a way that I'm going to allow you to pay us at least a portion when you have seen the leading indicators that you're getting, something out of this. Mm-hmm. Do you look at it that way? And by contrast, do you see some people who, arrange it differently, and that all of a sudden gives you, the heebie-jeebies?
The key word you said was qualify. Qualify. I think anyone that if you see a marketing agency that's complaining about his customers and I got a whole bunch of bad customers, that's on you, dude. Like you got to know your product, and you got to know what customers will get results from you so that you can maintain a reputation. And the other thing is, you were talking about qualifying and budgeting. Could you imagine if a business owner, if a marketing agency said, you don't have the money? Well, maybe you should take out a credit card. You don't have the money to risk on this marketing. Maybe you should take out a credit card. Maybe you could ask some of your friends to pay, to lend you some money, right? Maybe you could, and I've gone down the rabbit hole in some of these famous marketing guru type peoples. And at the end of the day, that's how they qualify everybody. Everybody's qualified. And then the second thing is they use really deceptive tactics. Like one guy, he will use a 2-hour live webinar. It's not actually live, but it looks like it's live. It looks like there's people asking questions that are all pre-programmed. There's someone who's taking your questions, and he's answering questions from the audience, which are all just objection handling. And at the end of it, after 2 hours of using every psychological tool in the book, he then goes and says, he asks a question from the audience: what happens if I don't have the money? Well, you could take out a credit card to pay for my $5,000 course. That is, as soon as you do that, if you're pressuring somebody into becoming your customer, I think personal responsibility says you take responsibility for their results. And that's where I think we can almost segue a bit into MLMs, into guru culture, coaching culture, and all of that is that if the responsibility for success is all on the end user, then what part are you taking responsibility for? As a marketing, you can never promise, you can never guarantee results. But what you can promise is that we're going to maintain this relationship. If my client disengages from the process, I'm going to call it quits. I'm going to say, you know what, Tom, you're probably not the right fit here, and I don't want to keep taking more of your money because you're not going to get the value. Whereas you can always tell when you're in a system when it's not qualified, and when they're trying to push the sale and then not taking responsibility. You can't have it both ways. Yes. You can't use persuasive tactics and then not. You can, you believe that you're going to help them, and you're like, hey, if I can get 100 clients and I'm going to make all of them rich, I'm going to take that responsibility on. Then use your persuasion. Maybe be a little more aggressive. But if you are, take the responsibility.
Very well put. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the certain players, although we don't need to name names. But just the point where you said, if you see, I've already heard the red flag, if you're not being qualified by the seller, the next one is if the default is that you will keep paying whether results show up or not, versus a kill switch where the seller or marketing agency will say to you, look, by this point, you should have gotten something, and we're not seeing something. So we are, proactively going to stop things and tell you this is one avenue that you don't need to go down again. You need to go and try something else. So I do think those are there. But, it does take two to tango. So tell me a little bit about how you see the buyer and their psychology being a part of this problem. What do you think it is about us when we're seeing marketing as something that can bring us our future revenues and, make all of our future visions of material wealth come true? What do you think it is that, we as buyers are really seeing as the enemy within?
Well, one of the ones, and I heard in a description of multi-level marketing is no one successful and at the peak of their life, career, or whatever, ever joined an MLM. And the main reason, and this is part of when we're talking about things, is that the type of people that get targeted with this type of advertising, if you look at it, it's always, what do you always hear? I used to be really
desperate. Yep.
I was desperate. I was broke. And as marketers, you and I know that that's qualifying your buyer. So if people are targeting the poor, the broke, someone who might have mental health issues because they can't hold their jobs down and they're having trouble in life, in typical business fashion is usually you scale up your clients. After you start off with the lower budget people because that's all.
Correct.
But your prices reflect that too, right?
Yep.
And as you get better, you go, you know what? I can't deal with these smaller clients anymore. They're too needy. I can't help them. We're not getting results. But when I doubled my prices and I started working with doubly the size of businesses, things got better. But what we actually see in a bad marketing system is the people that are joining these are the people most vulnerable. And that is, I believe, by design. You can look at the advertising and look at the webinars. And if you're targeting those people, and the definition, or not the definition, what they always say they're doing is because they want, hey, I'm a millionaire, I've made my millions and I want to give back. Well, if you're giving back, but you're putting these people in very financial hardships and you're really psychologically selling them and you're trying to saying, hey, I was in your position and get out, all that, I don't know. I don't know how people rationalize out of that, but that's where things get even bad. It's just like have you ever seen those really those spam emails you get that are so outrageous no one would ever click on them?
Yeah.
Well, those are by design because those emails don't want smart people wasting their time. They want desperate people. They want people who don't understand technology. They want old people who maybe aren't fully, aware of people maybe have gone on in age and aren't understanding what's going on, right? So I think who your customers are is really important and also says a lot about the type of business that you're running.
So you're describing for me, there's another organization out there that reaches people in the same way, and I'm kind of conflicted about it because it helps pay taxes and, make sure our roads and our, sports facilities and things we use as a community get done. But I'm talking about casinos and the lottery system. So this is in most places, or at least where we are, Ontario, this is a government monopoly or a licensed system. But, I'm seeing a lot of parallels here, Michael. I think you'd agree with me that the way that people are drawn into those is they're fundamentally unhappy with where they are, and the promise of quickly getting to where they could be, and that shortcut mentality really
there's a big difference though.
Go ahead.
The big difference is that gambling now has been regulated to entertainment. Like you're not going to gambling, like you'll be very hard pressed to see gambling as advertised as this is something that'll work forever. When by design, gambling is meant to make most people lose, right?
Wonderful.
So gambling is self-aware now that it's not your way to riches. It is a way to be entertained, and some people will make some money and you might have fun doing it, etc. Whereas what the claims are in marketing systems is to change your life, in that I was in your position, and if you just work hard, you'll do it. And the difference is that nobody is getting a referral fee and making money off of you for going into other than the business. That's a business, you're marketing, you had your free choice to go in. I'm not a big gambler. I'm not a big fan of it. You would never ever see me in a casino, but people have their choices to make. Where I don't like marketing systems is that the people who are supposedly giving you advice, business advice, saying, you know what, if you have negative people in your life, you got to cut those people out who are keeping you from your dreams. Well, you're the person selling them the dream, and you're the one making money off of them when they join your marketing team, right? Yeah. So, that's the difference, I'd say.
Yeah. And that whole thing of, this person has gone through and they want you to do what you're doing. I think the best lens that we can use this, because a good chunk of the listeners here are just people in small and mid-sized businesses, is use the same horse sense that you use with every other thing that you buy for your business or every hire you make. And that is, go to the numbers. And if the numbers look like they're in the realm of possibility, and let's say this provider is very upfront about the fact that if you go through things properly, there's an ROI, and maybe that ROI doesn't look so large, like it seems like a shortcut, but it looks like it will plausibly help you move to the next level. Then you can start to do this. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that in the gambling sense, it's entertainment, but where each of us as a buyer starts to veer over into the gambler's mindset, is where we seem to want the numbers to keep going higher and higher. And I think we just have to temper that with, what reality says. Like if let's say I hire an amazing person and they delight all my customers, that doesn't mean they're going to make 100x difference to my business. So I shouldn't expect that from any single marketing campaign. And anybody who is telling me that as a provider, I should be leery of. So, right?
Yeah, the gambler's fallacy is another thing that happens. And also a lot of guilt and shame is in these. I don't think most people realize how many people have been scammed. And I'll be upfront with you. There's one thing I've never told anyone. I had someone I got scammed once by not some marketing scam, but someone on my friends list who I'd known for, X number of years, not a friend, but acquaintance, asked me said, hey, I need $150 to some reason or another. And just, I need it, I'll pay you right back. I just need my taxi, like my car broke. I just need to get a taxi to go get some money. Like it was like classic kind of scam. And I fell for it. And now I've never heard of that dude again. Right.
Oh man.
And it was only $150, luckily. Right. But I don't want to tell people that. Why would I tell people I fell for such an obvious mistake? The thing was I fell for it because I was in a difficult spot. There was a lot going on in my life, and I wanted to I was just in a spot where that his tactic worked. He probably messaged like 1,000 people that same thing, right?
Right, and on the average, made enough of it to make it worth it.
Yeah, and if you look into, I don't think most people realize that if you put on your Facebook saying, hey, would anyone want to private message me if anyone's been involved in a scam, if they've ever joined like X type of a marketing company, you'd be surprised how many people have been and don't want anyone else to do it, but they also don't want to tell you. And the numbers, and to talk about the numbers, one thing I do for anyone, and I saying, if you're ever concerned that you're in this for a scam, or you ever think the thing you're part of isn't what it seems to be, you can send me a message and I will go through the numbers with you. And
nice.
One of them,
because once you put it in public, and this is like classic predator thinking, right? Once you put it in public and maybe message a few other people and run it by them, if that person is shady, they're gone, right? Because they can't control that situation. They're much better when they have you in a quiet alleyway, and what they're about to do cannot be seen, or that shared by people, or have other people say, "Hey, dude, not cool."
So Glenn, I got like 2 minutes, but there's one thing I wanted to get out really quick. It is one thing you can do with a lot of marketing companies is that they have things called income disclosures. They're mandatory, that they'll put their numbers out of how many people actually make money in. And I will tell you that I've not ever seen one marketing system, and mainly talking MLM, but there's other marketing systems out there that do not have better than a 99.5% success rate. Or failure rate, sorry. So what that means is that less than 1% of people will actually make money. But here's the thing. When you look at these income disclosures, you see 1%. Oh, 1% make a lot of money. Okay, life's really tough. But this is only 1% of the people who are still in the system. So what that doesn't count is all the people who are no longer in the system now.
I see.
And we all know that MLMs and marketing companies, they have a high turnover.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to, and I don't like calling companies out. I did it once or twice and I felt bad about it. But what we should always do is equip people with three important facts. One, understand the numbers, and don't take these numbers are often made very complicated so that they're hard to figure out.
Right.
Two, understand the psychology of what's being done.
Yep.
These systems have been being perfected for hundreds of years. Yep. Scammers, pyramid schemes, gurus, coaches, they know what they're doing. These are salespeople at the top of their game. So understand all the different psychology that can be used. The fact that there's a lot of guilt and shame that's hiding things, and there's a lot of pressure. Ask yourself, are you in a position to take a risk? Because there's no such thing as a sure thing. And then the third thing is to keep connected with your community and keep connected with family, friends, the people that love you, because there's a lot of people that these scams, what they really do is they separate you from the people who are going to give you the good advice. Yeah, sure. Maybe sometimes your friends and family might lead you astray, and they maybe just don't understand the opportunity you have, but they actually love you. And if they were wrong, at the end of the day, they would apologize. When scams get it wrong, they move on to the next one. So those are the three things I always say to people.
So true. And listen, thank you so much for your offer of help. If people want to reach out and talk with you about that or something else, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'm super active on LinkedIn. So Michael Pacitto on LinkedIn. MarketPie is also another way to get out there. You just search my name on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'll answer any question anyone ever has, because this is my passion and my hobby. Clearly.
Listen, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show today. And for the listener, if you like what you heard today, please share this with a friend, somebody who you think might fall prey to this or just would be interested in hearing about the side of marketing that we don't normally talk about. And if you want to get in touch with me or with the show, go ahead and catch us on Funnel Reboot on Instagram or Twitter, or me at HeyGlennS. And thanks so much for listening. Thanks again for coming on, Mike.
My pleasure, Glenn. It was a ton of fun.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.